Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
This week, I've prepared something a little different. Two faces have dominated a nation in the last few weeks. Despite the worldwide COVID-19 pandemic, the tragic murders of George Floyd, the global protests in honour of the Black Lives Matter movement, despite all of these things, two faces have still occupied primetime news, social media pages, and people's hearts. These are the faces of 17-year-old Tylee Ryan and 7-year-old JJ Vallow. What has also sparked anger and rage among the public is the strangest of circumstances surrounding this entire family. Two dead spouses, one dead brother, and now, with absolute heartbreak, two dead children. And at the centre of it all, one woman. One woman whose affiliation with the Latter-day Saints religion turned from the gospel of the end times into full-on doomsday prepping, conspiracy, death and murder. I am your speaker Casey, and this is the Cult Vault. Please be aware that within this episode I will be discussing subject matter of a sensitive nature. This content comes with a trigger warning, as there will be themes of assault, murder and the death of children. I also need to make everyone aware that the sources used within this episode will absolutely be published in the show notes. A lot of this information has been available for a while from the episodes of Dateline, Where Are the Kids, and 48 Hours, The Missing Children of Lori Vallow Daybell. A lot of the other information I have found on a subreddit that I will post a link to. It's the Lori Vallow subreddit, and the moderators and redditors are compassionate and extremely helpful. Most importantly, there is a timeline that has been prepared by Annie Cushing, Tylee Ryan's aunt, who decided to share this very extensive, personally made timeline. When Annie was asked why, she said, "Good question. I am a former reporter and I'm really tired of watching Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell walk free while the rest of us agonise over where Tylee and JJ are. One of the toughest aspects to this case is the many moving pieces and twisted storylines. So I thought maybe if I could detangle it a bit, some brilliant reporter, real crime blogger, private investigator or detective will find a clue that helps crack this case. I've also seen a number of inaccuracies, and I hope that this timeline will help people to grasp the order of events. That said, when I cite a source, it's not necessarily the original source, it's just where I found that particular puzzle piece. And when I started curating this timeline, I wasn't keeping track of any citations, so some elements are missing. Use this at your own risk. I've done my best to track everything down. I will post the link to Annielytics, which is Annie's blog, along with a very well-made family tree from a podcast called Murder Radio. I will share a picture of this and links to their podcast also. What I will try and do with this episode to ensure that it isn't another rewrite of previous people's work who have covered this case is use information gained since Lori's arrest and offer a future timeline of court appearances and trial dates. This episode will come in 2 parts, and I do have to warn that it's extremely long, and again it comes with a trigger warning. The woman at the centre of our story, Lori, has gone by many previous last names. Between 1990 and 2005, she had been married 3 times. Her first marriage was to her high school boyfriend, shortly after graduating high school in 1992. The second marriage was on October 22nd, 1995, to William LeJoa in Travis County in Texas. In 1996, they had a baby boy together, Colby, and later this year, on December 17th, William LeJoa files for divorce. This divorce is finalised by February 25th, 1998. But we begin our story at a time where Lori goes by her maiden name, Lori Cox. An article on the Crime Online website written by Ellen Killoran on February 25th, 2020 tells us a little bit about Lori years before her name reached the headlines for nefarious reasons. It reads, Tammy Joyce says she was friendly with Lori when she lived in Texas and hasn't seen her since 2007. When they first met, Lori was still using her maiden name, Cox, but soon after she married Joseph Ryan, Tylee's father, and took his name. Joyce told Crime Online that Laurie worked as a hairstylist and appeared to be happy with Ryan and her son from her first marriage, Colby, who is now in his 20s. But something changed, Joyce said, and the marriage did not end well. Joyce met Laurie in Westlake, Texas, in the late 1990s, early 2000s. Laurie was very close with her young son Colby and told Joyce that she had been very much in love with the boy's father and wanted a life with him, but that the man, whose name Joyce could not remember and who she never met, did not want that. Joyce said that Laurie adored her children and took great care of them. She also took very good care of herself, abstaining from drinking and smoking and living a healthy lifestyle. She wouldn't even have a glass of wine, Joyce said, and typically went running twice a day. Laurie had not met Joseph Ryan when Joyce first met her, but was soon introduced to him. The couple had a brief courtship and married within a few months. They had Tylee and Ryan adopted Colby. Joyce could not recall if the boy had any relationship with his biological father. So in 2004, Laurie went on to be a semi-finalist in the Mrs. Texas pageant in Grapevine, Texas. Between 2000 and 2004, Laurie had met and married her third husband, Joseph Anthony Ryan Jr. They go on to have their daughter in 2002 and name her Tylee Ryan. Joseph Ryan, of course, adopts Laurie's son Colby from her second marriage. But on August 13, 2004, Joseph Ryan files for divorce. The divorce proceedings for this couple would be particularly turbulent and a rollercoaster story all on its own. An article released on the KTUV website went into brief detail about the violent relationship, angry divorce proceedings and grim custody battle for Tylee that proceeded. It reads, quote, Joseph Ryan took action against Laurie when she reportedly failed to keep her end of the custody agreement, which included Ryan seeing his daughter during summer school break and several different weekends and living within a 100-mile radius of his ex-wife. The 2006 court filing outlined these terms approved by a court a year earlier. The lawsuit asked the court to fine Laurie, hold her in contempt, and send her to jail for 18 months for ignoring the custody order. This led to a dispute between Ryan and his former brother-in-law, Alex Cox, during which Ryan was assaulted with a stun gun. Laurie's brother, Alex Cox, pleaded guilty to aggravated assault and was sentenced to 3 months in jail. Laurie's eldest son, Colby Ryan, released new details about his stepfather during an interview with NBC's Dateline. Colby said, "He went out of his way to make a point. He would spank me and just did weird things like little hits on the head. He thought it was funny." Keith Morrison asked Colby Ryan if Joseph Ryan was sexually abusive toward him in addition to being physically abusive. Colby Ryan said yes, he was. It's unknown if this information influenced anything in regard to the lawsuit or custody battle. The custody battle dragged on for 12 years until 2018 when Joseph Ryan died of a reported heart attack. The Idaho Attorney General's office is investigating his death in the wake of the children's disappearance and a string of other unexpected deaths. This is the end of the article, but Laurie's brother Alex is a character to keep in mind throughout this story, and so is the year 2018. Joseph Ryan's sister, who I mentioned at the start of this episode, Annie Cushing, wrote a statement about her brother's violent nature and whether these accusations of abuse are true. Taken straight from her Facebook page, it reads, "I've been reached out to by multiple people about my thoughts on Colby's allegations of sexual abuse by my brother in tonight's Dateline episode, so I'll leave them here. Warning, if you were a victim of sexual abuse, this post and the discussion around it could be triggering. These groups need to be a safe place where people can discuss issues without fear and backlash. If this is a raw topic, please read responsibly. As a victim of childhood sexual abuse, I'm not one to question victims. I'm sure there are people who would have thought my abusers were not capable of the evil they committed against me. I witnessed my brother physically abuse Colby. He had his wrist bent back as he dragged him up the stairs. It was unnecessary force. And then I heard the belt. After dealing with a week of his outbursts, rages, and more subtly abusive behaviour towards Colby, this incident was the proverbial last straw in Joe's and my relationship. My kids were so scared after one of his rages, I promised they would never see him again. I also told Laurie I worried about their safety and appealed to her to not let him handle discipline. He was a bachelor till the rapture kind of dude and was brand new to parenting. He was out of his depth. I left that home angry, worried, and regretful that I had accepted his invitation to vacation together. I could have never imagined then the dramatic turn of events that would happen 15 years later, where Laurie would become the abuser. Laurie asked me to testify against Joe. She said he was abusing Colby and Tylee both physically and sexually. I forget exactly what she said that made me think they could compel me to testify. Both attorneys seemed disappointed because I just recounted what I witnessed. I repeatedly said I couldn't speak to the sexual abuse allegations because I didn't witness that. Only my concerns about his anger. I've addressed this before, but I put a good deal of responsibility for Joe's anger and mental health issues on the foster care system. There was no counselling services offered to any of us at the time. We were left to fend for ourselves, so I understood his struggle, but I personally believe regardless of your past trauma, when you become a parent or caregiver of children, you do whatever you need to do to get to a place where you're safe around them. Get therapy, take medication, whatever it takes. They lived in a near mansion. It's not like he didn't have any resources to get this help, but he dismissed therapy as some kind of panacea for the weak. If my brother did sexually abuse Colby, I hope he gets the help he needs. Likewise, if Colby is lying, I hope he gets the help he needs. Regardless, there's no question Colby was repeatedly victimised in childhood. He grew up in an incredibly unstable environment. He has a long, hard road to recovery. Hopefully he can break this vicious cycle of sociopathy with his young family. I wish him only the best. Again, I will post all of these links in the show notes. Even though the custody battle would drag on for well over a decade, the divorce was finalised on May 18th, 2005. And on February the 24th, 2006, Laurie would go on to marry her fourth husband, successful investment advisor Leland Charles Anthony Vallow in Las Vegas. Laurie would now become Laurie Vallow. Charles was raised Catholic but converted to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints after meeting Laurie, a lifelong Latter-day Saint herself. Charles had previously been married to Cheryl Wheeler, and they had 2 sons together, who are now grown adults themselves. An article on EastIdahoNews.com provides a little more information about Cheryl and Charles. It reads, quote, Cheryl and Charles met through mutual friends in 1991. They were living in Austin, Texas, and were married within a year. He was very charming and always dressed very nicely. He's definitely a salesman, Cheryl says. He's helped a lot of people and had a lot of good friends. He came from a big family who was very close. And here was the interesting guy from Louisiana that ended up in Austin. The couple was married 12 years and had 2 sons. The boys, named Cole and Zach, adored their father, and Charles was nicknamed the Disneyland Dad because he was so much fun. He would take the boys fishing and to campouts and Boy Scouts and just loved doing all that, Cheryl recalls. Charles was an athlete, but my boys were not into baseball or football. They did row and soccer, and he was very, very supportive of all of their activities. Cheryl and Charles divorced in 2003. Cheryl remarried, and in 2006, Charles married Laurie Ryan in Las Vegas. People describe Laurie and Charles as having a wonderful relationship. Laurie's friend Echo says in the Dateline episode, Laurie was the mum I wanted to be. And after they married in 2006, there are several happy years living as a family. One notable thing to mention here is that in 2008, Laurie's brother Alex Cox sends a friend a letter asking her to send him Joseph Ryan's picture, address, and license plate number in jail, stating once that it would be popular in here and some guy would like to hang out with him. I found this on an article on the fox10phoenix.com website. In 2004, the couple would decide to expand their little family by adopting Charles's great-nephew Joshua. Charles' sister Kay and her husband Larry Woodcock received news on May 25th of 2012 that they had become grandparents to a beautiful little boy. Their son and his girlfriend had had the baby, but sadly when he was born he had drugs in his system. Joshua was later diagnosed with autism and ADHD. Baby Joshua, nicknamed JJ, went into the care of his grandparents Kay and Larry, and they were both besotted with him. They fell in love with little JJ, and on the Dateline episode, Larry speaks of how baby JJ couldn't settle and sleep, so Larry opened his dressing gown and cuddled the little baby inside, and JJ falls to sleep instantly. Kay and Larry ran their own business and found the behavioural needs of JJ and the commitment of their business difficult to juggle. They loved JJ, but they knew deep in their hearts that he deserved more. someone's full attention, and to help with education and a routine that he could stick to. With this in mind, Charles and Laurie decided to adopt JJ. Kay and Larry thought that this would be the perfect solution. They could see JJ all the time and speak to him on the phone every day. Financially, Charles had enough money to support the family very well, and with Laurie not needing to work, she would be home always to provide the care JJ needed and ensure a good routine for his learning difficulties. So to clear up any confusion over this later on, JJ is Charles's great-nephew but adopted son. He is also Kay's grandson but adopted nephew. Tylee, who was often described as strong-willed and outspoken, accepted JJ with open arms. The media has since described them as inseparable, and within the 48 Hours episode, you can see a homemade video of Tylee saying, "Why are you recording a video of my son?" in an endearing but protective tone. The pair hit it off.
Looking for excitement? Chumba Casino is here. Play anytime, play anywhere. Play on the train, play at the store, play at home, play when you're bored. Play today for your chance to win and get daily bonuses when you log in. So what are you waiting for? Don't delay. Chumba Casino is free to play.
Experience social gameplay like never before. Go to Chumba Casino right now to play hundreds of games, including online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Live the Chumba life at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
And become brother and sister in an instant. And they remained this way until one day, people around them realised that they were both missing. At the end of 2014, the family, Charles, Laurie, Tylee and JJ, moved to Kauai in Hawaii, a lifelong dream of both Laurie and Charles before they had even met. With luscious green and blue backdrops, the family soon made their home in Hawaii, attending a small LDS church on the island and even opening a small business according to business records. In 2015, Laurie met April Raymond, a divorced mother of two who spoke to Dateline. She explained that they instantly became friends. They were both devout Mormons, but before Laurie's arrival, April often felt isolated in her church because she was a divorced woman. She explained that they both had so much in common, including both being fitness instructors. Perhaps this was the small business that they were running on the island. April explained how Charles would play with all the children, and it was around this time that JJ received a gift. Bailey. Bailey was a service dog. Kay says JJ was finally able to sleep through the night with Bailey, and they were joint at the hip. It well and truly seemed like paradise on earth. The only strange thing April mentions is Laurie's brother Alex. Remember the guy who tasered Laurie's third husband and attempted to get his information when he was in prison? April said that when she met Alex, he seemed off. She told Dateline that something was not quite right, and he would, quote, do anything Laurie asked. Alex even approached April to tell her he attempted to take the life of Laurie's ex-husband Joe. This was admitted in court back in 2007 when Alex served time. A year or two after living on the utopian island around 2015, a friend of Laurie's tells New York's Fox 5 News that Laurie begins becoming obsessed with a set of fictional books named Standing in Holy Places, which centres upon apocalyptic scenarios loosely based on Mormon theology. This appears to be the point in the timeline where events begin to take a darker and sinister turn. Laurie even went on to buy these books for this friend. And the author of these books? Well, he's the next notable character in this story, Chad Daybell. Born on August 11th, 1968, Chad Daybell grew up in Provo, Utah. Chad did LDS missionary work in Morristown, New Jersey from 1987 to 1989. He then met his wife, Tamara Tammy Douglas, at the Brigham Young University. They marry in Utah on March the 9th, 1990. He graduates with a BA in journalism in 1992. In his senior year, Chad served as an assistant city editor for BYU's newspaper called the Daily Universe. In his last semester at BYU, he served as city editor. They go on to have 5 children together throughout this marriage, and the BYU website tells us that his parents are Jack and Sheila Chestnut Daybell. The names of his 5 children are Garth, Emma, Seth, Leah, and Mark. Throughout his career, Chad would work many writing jobs. The Mormon Arts BYU website tells us Chad Daybell has served as the managing editor for Cedar Fort, Inc., a Utah-based publisher, until he established his own publishing company, Spring Creek Book Company. Chad has written several LDS novels as well as LDS-based non-fiction books for children and teenagers. Chad's friend Benjamin Hyde, whom he served his missionary work with, described Chaz as a successful missionary, saying that he would speak and people were drawn to him. He described him as the most humbling, unassuming man he'd ever met on the Dateline episode. However, Chad also had other jobs throughout his time at university, and one includes being a sexton. Sexton is the term for a gravedigger. An article on crimeonline.com talks of Chad's employment history. In a 2001 interview with the Deseret News, Daybell spoke about his enthusiasm for his job, which he reportedly performed while he was a student at BYU University. According to an earlier article in the Deseret News, at least 2 of the Daybell siblings had also worked their way through school as gravediggers. The more recent report indicates that Daybell worked as a gravedigger for several years, even after he finished college. Taking care of graves is rewarding, as well as helping widows and grieving families deal with the trauma, Daybell said. He found this work so rewarding he went on to write books about it. An article on the New York Post says Daybell, a Latter-day Saint author who's written more than 24 novels, dedicated a whole chapter to the myths behind grave digging and wrote that bodies were rarely buried in the wrong place. A sexton knows his cemetery like the back of his hand, and a good one will double-check himself as he begins digging each new grave. Mistakes are extremely rare and almost impossible. Chad dished on industry secrets he learned toiling in the trade, writing that sextons don't dig graves deeper than we have to. Sad times are always when you have to bury babies, Daybell wrote. That's always a very poignant moment. Chad penned a 2001 book titled One Foot in the Grave, The Strange But True Adventures of a Cemetery Sexton. Chad's friends also explained to Dateline how he had a number of paranormal encounters during his time as a gravedigger, where locks were being broken into by the spirit of a man who was a thief and lockpicker. Chad supposedly told this spirit he needed to stop breaking into places and picking locks or Chad would lose his job, and this never happened again. Also notable was the fact that Chad believed he had access to another spiritual realm. On the Amazon description for his book Living on the Edge of Heaven, it says, when Chad Daybell was 17 years old, he had a near-death experience while cliff jumping. He crossed into another dimension and realised there was a world beyond this one. A second near-death experience in his early 20s was much more in-depth. He was hit by a monstrous wave at La Jolla Cove in California. Chad's friends told Dateline that after this second experience, Chad believed he had a permanent window into the spirit world where he could communicate with ancestors and even learn about his future life. It was these visions that pushed him to make changes in his life. He began writing mostly fiction at this point and started his own publishing company that focused mostly on doomsday and dystopian works with loose Mormon theology. Chad speaks of how a vision in the spirit world convinced him he needed to move his family to the ideal location to await the end of times. In June 2015, the Daybells purchase a house in Salem after Chad twice hears a voice that tells him to move to Rexburg, according to Chad's blog. And so, in 2015, Chad moves his family to Rexburg, Idaho, where he believes other saints, along with himself, were set to serve the Second Coming. Meanwhile, in late 2016, early 2017, Charles and Laurie returned to Arizona because of Charles's work and how it was easier for him to work from the mainland than Hawaii. Laurie stays in touch with her friend April. April tells Dateline how they would talk every 1 or 2 weeks and then eventually contact dropped off. On April the 3rd, Laurie's ex-husband Joseph Ryan dies. He is found dead in his apartment in Gilbert. His death is ruled a heart attack and his body is cremated. Little else is known around this case, and although his body was cremated, an article on People.com says, authorities are questioning Ryan's death. An FBI source tells People, quote, we are aware of Mr. Ryan's death and it has become part of the investigation into Laurie Vallow, end quote. Which suggests they may be reopening this case to review evidence around whether the cause of death was in fact a heart attack. A month later, after his death, Joseph Ryan's sister Annie, whose timeline we are closely following, visits Laurie in her home. Her timeline then says, May 2018, Laurie Vallow expressed fear about the end times during my visits to their home, saying that sometimes she thinks it would be better to put her kids in the car and go over the side of a cliff. Around the fall of 2018, Laurie Vallow and Chad Daybell meet in person for the first time. There are several sources that surround this date. One date assumes it was sometime in the fall, where Laurie and her niece Melanie Boudreau, daughter of Laurie's sister Stacey, went to a Preparing a People conference where Laurie supposedly spoke with Chad afterwards and would soon start contributing to the Preparing a People podcast itself. On a side note, Laurie's sister, Stacey Lynn Cox Cope, born 17th of June 1966, died suddenly on the 21st of May 1998, aged 31. Her cause of death was undetermined. Going back to Laurie and Chad, another source suggests they met on September 23rd, and another source says they met on the 26th of October at a Preparing a People event in St. George. Either way, they met at the back end of 2018. Remember how I said that this would be an important year? That's because this is the year that Chad and Laurie finally meet. After years of Laurie fixating on his books, after years of Chad talking about needing to move to Rexburg in time for the rapture, this would be the time that all of this stuff begins to happen. We have arrived at the stage where I explain why we are covering this case on a cult podcast, and it is all to do with why Laurie is being called the cult mum. I'll start by explaining what is meant by Laurie meets Chad at a Preparing a People event. Preparing a People are a group of people who get together and talk on a podcast. You might be wondering why that sounds cultish and what this has to do with the overall story. But I'll work through the entire timeline before doubling back to break down the cult behaviours of this group. In October 2018,
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Chad and Laurie begin emailing, and soon he sends her a bizarre email that includes light and dark ratings of her family. Tylee is rated 4.1D for dark, only to be eclipsed by her father, Joseph Ryan, who weighed in at a 4.3D and was marked as sealed away. I will include photos of these emails on my social media. On the 16th and 17th of November, Chad speaks at a Preparing a People event in Arizona and stays with Charles and Laurie overnight. On December 5th, 2018, both Laurie and Melanie Gibb, a member of the Preparing a People podcast, introduced their new podcast called Time to Warrior Up. Here is a short clip of the two of them speaking on this episode.
Because who's on the other side of that obstacle? That's your relationship with Christ. He's over there waiting. And then we came to this earth, Jason does a great bit about this when he speaks to the youth about the pre-mortal life and all the things that he would be expecting when he got here. And I just loved it because we're all here. And in this day in 2018, we're here to exercise our agency. We're here to learn and to grow. And there's not one person out there, not one person who isn't having personal challenges.
No, Laura, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Everybody is facing their own, what's called an Abrahamic trial.
That's right.
We all have to come to that point where we have to decide who's in charge. And if he's in charge, then this is part of the plan.
And it's agency, right? And it's our own individual selves. So you really can't decide for your husband or wife. You really can't decide for your parents or your kids. Each person came down here to exercise their agency and to overcome those obstacles. And we all wanted to do it. I feel like we all had that desire to come here to get over that obstacle.
A description of this podcast goes as follows. Jason Mao of the very popular thewarchapters.com has been speaking to youth and their parents from all over the US about what it means to be a true modern-day warrior for good. Time to Warrior Up is a nationwide movement to become all that we were destined to become in a shifting world that needs great leaders. Of course, what would warriors be without great women of faith and courage? That is why Melanie Gibb and Laurie Vallow had the idea to do this podcast featuring powerful women, mothers, youth and mentors to encourage others along the pathway toward a hopeful future. They will include many unique guests who will inspire all of us to aspire to the higher within. Each of us were born for greatness. Now we have the hows of implementing the creeds, tools, steps, and processes of the warrior ethos. We are marching towards victory together. The podcast itself was under the Preparing a People's Podcast Network. Both Laurie and Chad appeared with others on several of these podcast episodes, many of which talked about the end of the world. Preparing a People has since removed the podcast and publicly disassociated itself from Chad and Laurie. However, the people involved in this podcast have not yet managed to detangle themselves from this situation, and speculation revolves to this day around each of them being included in this cult-like behaviour, and speculation around them also being involved in the disappearance of Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow. Christmas and New Year pass, and on New Year's Day, Laurie, Charles and the kids moved to Gilbert, Arizona, which is famous for once being a Mormon farming community. On the 28th of January, Laurie allegedly transfers $10,000 from Charles's business account into their personal account before moving the money into an unknown account. Laurie also transfers 2,000 of Charles's enterprise points to a personal account, although Charles won't discover the transfer until approximately February the 6th, 2019. On the 29th of January, Laurie allegedly transfers an additional $25,000 from the business account to their joint account, and then from their joint account to the same unknown account at Compass Bank, leaving the business account with less than $1,000. On this day, according to a petition for an order of protection filed by Charles against Laurie, Laurie made several disturbing statements threatening Charles. These include, she was a god. She was assigned to carry out the work of the 144,000 at Christ's second coming in July 2020. She would murder Charles if he got in her way and tried to stop him. She didn't trust Charles. She would need to kill Charles when she got home. She would have an angel there to dispose of his body. She knew his real name was Nick Schneider. Allegedly, when Charles asked Laurie who Nick Schneider was, she replied, "Nick is your real name," Laurie said, according to the documents. Nick killed Charles and has taken his identity. Laurie threatened that Charles would have to go painfully. She also threatened to destroy him financially, according to the court documents filed by Charles. When Charles phoned the police to inform them of this situation, there is body cam footage of him explaining to law enforcement that Laurie had had a break from reality. She thinks she was married to the angel Moroni in a previous life. She knows when the second coming is going to happen. She meets with Jesus Christ face to face in the temple every day. I've tried to support her as much as I can, but it's gotten really bad and I think she's had a break. She says I'm Nick Schneider and I've taken over Charles's body and Charles has been killed. She says I'm going to kill you today or tomorrow. He goes on to explain everything that happened with his car and the money. He also mentions that he has a 6-year-old with special needs, and during this time of the body cam footage, Charles begins getting very upset when he speaks about JJ. He looks worried and exhausted. The rest of the video is Charles explaining that she has lost touch with reality, saying she's unhinged and she is scaring the crap out of me. He petitions with law enforcement at this time to get her a mental health evaluation. On the 30th of January, Laurie allegedly cancels Charles's flight home, which he found out when he arrived at the airport in Houston, Texas, after a work trip. Charles was forced to buy a $600 last-minute ticket to Phoenix. After his plane landed, Charles walked out of the airport into the parking lot where he had left his truck, but he couldn't find his truck anywhere. Laurie had used the spare key to remove the truck. He came home to a house that had been emptied. Charles also claimed that it took Laurie 3 days to disclose where she'd left the truck. Charles was forced to rent a vehicle during this time. In Annie's timeline, it says, let's take a look at some of the other acts of cruelty that Charles reportedly came home to. She wiped out his business account, withdrawing $35,000 in total. This has been reported on quite a bit. But one thing I haven't seen reported on this are smaller withdrawals made after the $25,000 the day before. She wiped out his business account, withdrawing $35,000. This has been reported on quite a bit. According to the ledger, after the $35,000 in withdrawals, the account had $911.53 remaining. But then there are 2 more withdrawals made on the 30th of January, one for $500 and then one for $250. Leaving the account with $161.53. And then $100 was put towards a credit card payment, leaving the account with $61.53. I don't know if these transactions or withdrawals were made by Laurie. If they were, it demonstrates a chilling level of cruelty. She hid his truck, and it took him 3 days to find it. She hid his clothes and computer in what appears to be an attempt to cripple him in his business, even his underwear. She did this right before payroll was due, leaving him vulnerable to lawsuits. She victimized every employee in Charles's company with this theft. She took her disabled son's medication, iPad, and Bailey the service dog's collar. She changed the locks to the house, and then she went MIA and she didn't tell Charles where she was. On the 31st of January, Lori is compelled to report to the Gilbert Police Department in regard to a harassment call submitted by Charles. Police are also informed about a petition for an involuntary hold at community bridges. This is a place where Lori can be offered a mental health evaluation. Police say Lori would be allowed to go to the facility willingly to talk to staff, and if she did not, she would be taken involuntarily. It was at this time that Lori vanishes for 58 days. It later came to light that part of this time was spent in Hawaii with her daughter Tylee, and part of it was spent with her brother Alex in Arizona. During the months of February and March, Lori got back in touch with her old friend April, phoning her out of the blue to tell her she had just landed in Hawaii and needed a place to stay. During her visit, April told Dateline that Lori wasn't the same. She had changed in the 2 years since April had last seen her, talking about how she was going to leave Charles. April assumed they were having a fight and that it would blow over, but when April saw Lori, she realised that Lori seemed disorganised and manic, telling April that, quote, Charles had an affair, he's been violent. April said this didn't sit well with her because Charles was her friend too. Lori tells April about the sabotage to Charles's work trip in a gleeful manner, talking about how her and a friend went to the airport and stole his truck. Charles had also told his sister Kay and her husband Larry that he returned from his work trip to find all of his and JJ's clothes missing, that $35,000 had been taken by Lori. Charles told Kay how Lori had spoken about being a translated being, a god, and that she had been put on this earth to save the chosen 144,000 people during the second coming of Christ, which she believed to be happening on July 22nd, 2020.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
April goes on to say that Lori spoke about people April had never heard of. Chad Daybell, some podcast group, talking of things that were not traditionally LDS. Lori told April that she herself was ordained to go to heaven, and Lori was there to save her. She had returned to Hawaii to collect April and take her to Rexburg in time for Doomsday. April explained that she had 2 children to take care of and she couldn't just leave with Lori. April also notes how Tylee was with Lori at this time, but she was either sleeping, just waking up, or just going down to sleep. April says that perhaps Tylee was dealing with some kind of depression. Lori also tells April that Charles is already dead, that he has a demon inside him. Then she changes her story slightly and says that Charles is alive, but any day now I'll get the call that he is dead. Charles had also mentioned to his sister Kay at this point that Lori had threatened Charles, saying that she was going to murder Charles and there would be angels there to dispose of his body. April also noted that Lori talked of how she existed on Earth several times before this, that she had been reincarnated, and she had special powers. April declined Lori's invitation to leave her son behind and join the 144,000 that were to be saved, and soon after this, Lori left Hawaii once again. On the 4th of February, Charles Vallow petitions an order for protection against Lori Vallow, citing the incidences where he had been threatened by her. Lori was never served this document because the process servers were unsuccessful in locating her. On the 5th of February, JJ is absent from his school, the LIFE Life Academy in Gilbert, Arizona. Also on this day, Charles is threatened with legal action because of not being able to meet payroll due to the $35,000 that Lori had withdrawn from his business account. The next day, Charles realises Laurie transferred 2,000 rent-a-car points out of their joint enterprise account. Charles also finds out that Laurie had called JJ's school to ask if he was in class. This is where Charles begins to worry that she may be planning to use the rental car points to potentially leave the state and take JJ with her. 2 days later, Charles files for a divorce from Laurie. He cites Laurie threatening to murder him, stealing $35,000 and claiming to be reincarnated. It is also on this date that Charles removes Laurie as the sole beneficiary of his $1 million life insurance policy. Upon the advice of his attorney, Laurie is unaware that this has happened, but she finds out later on. From a Fox 10 article published on February the 13th, 2020, Charles's former attorney told reporter Lum that it is rare to make changes to life insurance beneficiaries way ahead of a divorce being finalised, but Charles told his lawyer that he feared for his life and did not want Laurie to know that he had planned to remove her from the policy. Because of the circumstances surrounding it, with him fearing for his life and really stressing to us that there is some credibility here, we went ahead and advised him to change it right away, said Taylor Larson. On the 11th of February, Charles Vallow visits the Life Academy. School officials say that Charles had reported Laurie had gone crazy, was hearing religious voices, had disappeared to an unknown location, that Charles had secured a protection order against Laurie, and that he was pulling JJ out of school and taking him out of the state until he knew it was safe. On the 15th of February, Charles files a document asking for temporary custody of JJ, exclusive use of the house and vehicle, return of the stolen money, and return of his and JJ's personal items. Several attempts were made to serve Laurie, but process servers were unsuccessful, even though Laurie's car was seen in Alex Cox's driveway when a server tried to serve her there. She was reportedly living with her brother, Alex Cox, at the time. The next day, Preparing a People holds a one-day conference in Boise, Idaho. Chad Daybell is one of the speakers. It appears Charles believed Laurie was planning to attend this event, which led to an attempt to process servers to serve Laurie with papers at the airport. When Charles learned Laurie was going to Boise with a friend, he made attempts to serve Laurie at the airport, hotel and public event. All attempts were unsuccessful, and Charles came to believe that Laurie had changed her travel plans at the last minute. Also in February, Chad Daybell writes a foreword for his colleague and friend Melanie Gibbs' book Field of Fire, in which he talks of how she is born again through her saviour, to lead others to be saved and realise their own worth, potential and powers. He talks of their time together on Time to Warrior Up and Preparing a People podcast. On the 21st of February, Charles and JJ return to JJ's school, the Life Academy. Lawrence Institute for Education is an organisation that offers a private academy, after-school and summer programmes for children with additional learning, behavioural and special needs. At this time, Laurie is still missing, and it is around this time that the Life Academy made a report to Child Protective Services on JJ's behalf because his mother is MIA. In early March, Charles dismisses the divorce proceedings and decides to give the marriage another go. On the 6th of March, the court approves this dismissal, and on the 7th, Charles withdraws JJ from the Life Academy and moves to Houston, Texas. Later on this month, on the 26th, Charles reaches out to a friend by text message. These texts are then passed from that friend to a producer on Dateline. They read, Charles, I truly feel there is no good ending for her. Emotionally, JJ is about 4. He will remember bits and pieces, but thankfully not the pain she's put a lot of people through for her mission from God. Friend, Charles, I appreciate you trusting me. I will continue to pray for you and your family. You have a friend here that you can truly trust. I have to go now, and I will keep you updated. Sleep well, my friend. Go with God. Charles replies with a heart emoji. Friend, I still can't believe it. Charles, 58 days, believe it. That beautiful, sweet Laurie you and I knew is gone. She actually believes I'm not Charles. She says I'm an evil spirit named Nick Schneider. She says an evil spirit named Nick Schneider married me and is using me to violate her and her family. Not kidding. Got to get out of here. Friend, holy camel, I can't even relate. Who the fake is Nick Schneider? The last time I saw Laurie, she couldn't say enough wonderful things. Charles, Things have changed so dramatically in the past 6 months. Something snapped. It is so unbelievable and scary. I'm thankful she doesn't see JJ. She wants him and for me to disappear. Seriously, it's the freakiest thing I've ever experienced. She's with a group of people called Woke and Preparing a People. She actually believes I'm not Charles. She thinks I'm an evil spirit. After 58 days of being MIA, on the 29th of March, Laurie finally returns home. On the 9th of April, Chad Daybell's friend and Doomsday podcaster Julie Rowe is told that she would be excommunicated from the Church of Latter-day Saints based on the charges of 1. Apostasy, 2. Teaching false doctrine, 3. Priestcraft, and 4. Defaming the good name of the church. She and her husband would appeal the decision but expect it to be denied. A website called wheatandtars.org wrote this. Another Latter-day Saint podcaster has been excommunicated. Julie Rowe caused a commotion several years ago when she was widely publicised as one of several people inspiring a massive prepper craze in September 2015. Although she's kept a lower profile in recent years, Julie continues to share her visions in podcasts, books, and media interviews. She also practices and teaches the Emotion Code, a holistic method combining energy healing and muscle testing. It appears that both her teachings and involvement in energy work were factors in her April 9th excommunication. An article on People.com, written by Kathy Free in 2015, says, some preppers have apparently been influenced by Mormon blogger Julie Rowe, a Tucson, Arizona mother of 3 who claims she saw the world's cataclysmic future after a near-death experience in 2004. She wrote 2 books, A Great Tomorrow, The Journey Beyond the Veil, and The Time Is Now, showing visions of plagues, famines, tented cities, and massive global catastrophes. For more than a year, Rowe, 42, has been a popular speaker nationwide, prompting leaders of the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to issue a rare memo saying, although Sister Rowe is an active member of the LDS Church, her book is not endorsed by the Church and should not be recommended to students or used as a resource in teaching them. The experiences she shares are her own personal experiences and do not necessarily reflect Church doctrine, or they may distort doctrine. On the 31st of May, Chad Daybell cancels a speaking gig at a Preparing a People conference due to a family emergency. The announcement reads, David Warwick and Sean Littlebear will be filling in for Chad Daybell, who has had a family emergency. We regret he won't be able to attend this Preparing a People event. In June 2019, Laurie's niece, Melanie Boudreau, asks her husband, Brandon, for a divorce.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Brandon said, I thought I had a happy marriage, so it was pretty overwhelming. Brandon tells Facebook that the demand for divorce after 11 years was unexpected, and he believes that it was due to Melanie following her Aunt Laurie and Chad into what he calls a cult. On the 20th of June, Laurie moves into her rental home in Chandler, Arizona. 9 days later, Charles sends an email to Laurie Vallow's brother, Adam Cox, and says that he is suspicious of Laurie and Chad's relationship and plans to reach out to Chad's wife, Tammy, about his concerns. He finds an email account in his name that Laurie has set up where she has sent emails, posing as Charles, over to Chad Daybell. Laurie wrote, I would gladly fly you down here early next week. You could stay in our guest room like before. I hate to take you away from your family, but I would definitely make it worth your time. With admiration, Charles. Once Charles found these emails, he then got in touch with Laurie's brother Adam, saying, I'm not sure of the relationship with her and Chad Daybell, but they are up to something. She will not explain it. I'm going to send it to Chad Daybell's wife. Her name is Tammy, and I found her email address on their website too. I've also got her cell phone number. During this month, Laurie would also contact the Life Academy to let them know that the family was back in Gilbert and enrolled JJ into the summer program on July 11th. Charles is shot dead by Laurie's brother, Alex Cox. According to Fox reporter Justin Lunn, the shooting occurred around 8:30 a.m. Alex calls 911 to report the shooting and claims it was in self-defense. Here is a small sample of that call.
Yes.
You need
Yes.
police or paramedics?
Both. I'm in police and an ambulance.
What's the emergency there?
I got in a fight with my brother-in-law and I shot him in self-defense.
And is he hurt or is he alive or?
Yeah, there's blood. He's not moving.
How long ago did this happen?
A couple of minutes.
Alex is then questioned outside of Laurie's home by law enforcement, which is recorded on the officers' body cams, where he tells the officers the same story he had told them on the phone, that he was in Laurie's house when Charles had arrived and he shot Charles in self-defense. Some of that body cam footage audio sounds like this.
What happened today? How did it get to this?
I don't know, he was enraged.
What's going on? What happened?
He was talking with my sister earlier.
No, what happened today, though? Like, just in the last 20 minutes.
He came at me with a bat.
Okay. Was he living here or
No.
visiting?
He came to pick up his son.
Okay, is the son inside?
No. My sister took him to school.
Okay, so it was just you at the house?
Yes.
And he came, how long, what time did he come to pick up the son?
I don't know, 20 minutes ago maybe.
Okay, so you know who he is, let him in?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think they were talking earlier, then she left, and then he got into it with me.
Like what? What do you mean?
I don't know, he was just yelling at me.
Okay, what was he yelling at you about?
He thought my sister because I'd broken up the tussle with them earlier. And he told me not to interfere anymore with them or I'd pay. And he came at me with a bat.
Okay, so he showed up in the house with a bat in his hand?
No.
Okay, so...
There was a scuffle earlier with my sister and my niece. My niece got involved.
About earlier meaning earlier this week, earlier this morning?
Just this morning, before they left.
Before your wife left?
My sister.
Before your sister left?
Yeah.
Okay, who lives here with you?
Nobody. I don't live here. My sister lives here and my niece lives here.
And you're just visiting?
I was visiting for the night.
An officer then goes into the home to look around and sees the body of deceased Charles Vallow. Laurie and Tylee were interviewed outside the home. This is Laurie explaining how she didn't want the neighbours to think badly of them because of this incident.
We just moved in here.
Gotcha. How long have you guys lived here?
I'm sorry?
How long have you lived here?
Like 3 weeks.
Oh, geez. Yeah, okay.
That's why the neighbors don't know us.
Gotcha.
Like, hi neighbor, sorry.
Are you working at all?
No.
Okay. And you're still about 5'6"? And how old are you again?
16.
16. Do you have a driver's license?
I do, it's inside.
Nice. So you're a new driver, huh? How do you like that?
Well, almost 17.
Almost? Oh, so you're an old hat then.
Yeah, I drove here from Texas by myself, so I'm pretty used to it by now.
Okay.
Laurie, Alex and Tylee are all questioned at the police station, and Laurie's transcript can be found online. It says, the interview with Laurie began at approximately 09:43 hours after Laurie had used the restroom. I obtained personal information from Laurie initially and confirmed that Laurie lived at the residence where the incident occurred. I asked Laurie to tell me what happened, starting at what worked for her, and that I would probably ask questions. Laurie stated she had moved into the house 3 weeks ago because he, the deceased, had offered to get the house here where her family was and indicated that they had been in Houston. Laurie advised that they had decided to separate and her husband had said that he would get a house for her and redacted. As a side note, I'm going to guess redacted is JJ and or Tylee as they are minors. Laurie stated that the deceased was all about JJ, but it was never about JJ. Laurie advised they adopted JJ together, and JJ was actually her husband's great nephew and had been a drug baby. Laurie advised her husband travels all the time for business, and he is always back and forth. Laurie said her husband came the first time when she moved from Houston and brought her some things and he hadn't been back, but it's all these threats. And I asked about the threats. Laurie mentioned it was all on her phone, and I asked about the threats. She said I would have to see them, but he was always mad at her. Laurie said he didn't want a divorce, but she didn't like him and didn't want to deal with him. Laurie said they had been married for 14 years and she had dealt with it for 14 years and he had always been horrible to her. Tylee's transcript also had redacted in place of Tylee or JJ's name. But I will say Tylee to make it easier to follow. Her transcript reads, "The interview with Tylee began at approximately 10:14 hours and I obtained some personal information from Tylee. Tylee is a 16-year-old female and appeared cooperative, calm and understanding of the situation during my contact with her. Tylee did not appear overly emotional and I did not notice any other issues or problems that I believed to interfere with an interview. I asked Tylee if she could tell me what happened today and told her to start with whatever place made sense, adding that I would ask questions. Tylee advised that she woke up around 7:50 a.m. because she heard a yelling right outside her door. Tylee said she immediately jumped up. Tylee stated she had a baseball bat and explained that when she was living at her uncle's, she was by herself and wanted something to feel safer and she's not old enough for pepper spray. I explained to her that I had not been inside the house and asked her about where her bedroom door opens to. Tylee explained the guest room is right there, where her room is, and then her little brother's room, and then the kitchen. Tylee explained it's a little hallway, and then there's an area where everything kind of happened. Tylee said it's a big room where there isn't anything, but there are mirrors. Tylee said she immediately jumped up and got the bat, and she opened the door, and it was her stepdad outside the doorway and her uncle kind of in the doorway, and she could hear her mum behind him. Tylee said her stepdad was screaming at both of them, but she doesn't know what they were saying. Tylee stated she told him to take a few steps back and "you're too close, you need to step back." And he told her, "Don't tell me what to do." Tylee said she stood there and her uncle kind of moved out of the way and her mum kind of went past him and into the big room where everything happened and she kind of walked with them. I asked if they were more in the hallway and Tylee confirmed they were at the end of the hallway. Tylee stated her mum walked all the way around and Tylee followed her. Tylee is describing where people are, but she didn't really do anything with the baseball bat. She just kind of held it there. Tylee said that her mum and stepdad were both yelling, and her stepdad tells her if she hits him with the bat that she's going to jail. Tylee said she kind of stood there with the bat, and I asked who was yelling, and she said they were yelling, and Tylee stated it was mostly her stepdad, and he was really the only one yelling, and that her mum was responding. Tylee couldn't repeat what they were saying. Tylee said she kind of stuck the bat out, and her stepdad grabbed it and tried to take it, but she held on to it. Tylee is motioning like she held one end of the bat and he grabbed the other end of the bat with two hands. Tylee stated eventually she fell and he took the bat into his hands and held it like he was going to do something with it. I asked that when she fell he ended up with the bat and Tylee confirmed that. Tylee said she fell to the ground and then she saw her stepdad take a step back, so she thinks her uncle grabbed him and moved him back so he couldn't do anything. I confirmed that she saw her stepdad take a step back and she indicated yes, that he was really close and then moved back. Tylee advised that her mum told Tylee to go with JJ and then she ran to the door. Tylee said she stood there with her little brother. Tylee indicated he was in the front seat, so she opened the door and stood there. Tylee advised that JJ was trying to get out, but she kept him in the car. Tylee said eventually her mum came out and they left from there. Alex's transcript was never released, and it has been suggested that there were inconsistencies across the three given statements. Although the death was initially marked as a gunshot wound to the chest, with Alex shooting in self-defense, no arrests were made.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
One document from Chandler Police Department from this case actually reads, on the 7th of the 11th, 2019, at approximately 020 hours, Alexander L. Cox committed second-degree murder at Redacted when he shot Charles Vallow twice in the chest after a verbal and physical altercation. Later, this must have been determined that Alex was actually acting in self-defense. After some digging, I found that apparently Charles had gone to pick JJ up from the house to take him to school. Him and JJ had gotten into the car when Charles realised he'd left his phone inside the house. Upon re-entering the house to get his phone, he finds Laurie snooping through it. Angrily, he asks her to give it back. A shouting match begins between Laurie and Charles. Alex steps in between the two, and everybody is shouting. This is when Tylee comes from her bedroom with the bat, and the rest we know from Tylee's transcript. Eventually, the shouting match would lead to Alex shooting Charles in self-defense. Some strange things to note around this incident are things like Alex says he was staying at Laurie's house on vacation despite living 23 miles away. Colby Ryan, Laurie's oldest child, says that his mother called him that day to say that Charles had died of a heart attack. When he got to the house, he realised Charles had actually been shot by his uncle Alex. Charles was scheduled to look at apartments that day after dropping JJ off at school. Joe Pongratz submitted a Facebook post that read, "I've known Laurie and Charles since they moved to Chandler many years ago. We rented them the first time they lived here for around 5 years before moving to Kauai. I'd say we were good friends. My family visited them, Charles, Laurie, Tylee and JJ, in Kauai. When they returned to Chandler, Charles and I had several conversations during Laurie's disappearance in February 2019. He came to my house and cried, telling me he's so sad and that he can't believe she just abandoned JJ. A few text messages followed, and then they resurfaced as Charles tried to make the marriage work. We then rented Charles and Laurie another home in June 2019, where Charles was murdered on July 11th. Charles and I were texting the night before, on July 10th at 7:49 p.m, and planning to meet in the morning to find him another place to live because it wasn't working out with Laurie. That was the morning that he was shot. Many weird events followed. When the neighbours informed me police were at the house and yellow tape surrounded it, I immediately texted both Charles and Laurie, "Are you okay?" And I got no response until 11 a.m, and Laurie replied, "We're okay, I'll explain later." She and Alex were taken to Chandler PD for questioning and released. That day, the neighbours reported a pool party at the house the same day Charles was murdered, with loud music and lots of people swimming. Neighbours also reported that Alex was staying at the house for several days following the shooting, even though he lives in the same area. I spoke with Laurie several times a day following the shooting, and she never sounded shocked, sad or heartbroken, and you would think a bride would be watching her husband die. I asked her to move out, which she did on August 31st. No communication as to where she was going. I really like Charles and miss his smile and Louisiana, Texas twang accent. He was a generous and family man. Such a terrible loss. I'm so sorry he's gone. I wish I could have helped him sooner. Rest in peace, my friend. Alex said Charles attacked him with a baseball bat, so he shot him in self-defense. Law enforcement note on the Dateline episode how Alex kept dabbing the back of his head with a tissue, but there were only trace amounts of blood and a small cut despite Charles being a part of his high school baseball team and being athletically fit. Alex said Laurie, Tylee and JJ left before the shooting, but Laurie told police she had been home when Charles was shot, but then left immediately because she needed to take JJ to school. Laurie was glib and playful when talking to the officers at the scene. This can be heard in the audio of the body cam footage I played previously. Chandler Police Department Detective Nathan Moffat described Tylee as a very well-spoken young lady, noting that at one point she had told him, "In retrospect, I probably shouldn't have gotten the bat," and implies that perhaps Tylee had been coached. Moffat went on to describe in the Dateline episode that the car ride to the police station was straight up bizarre. He said it was the weirdest car ride he had ever had with 3 strangers, describing how Laurie was happy-go-lucky as if the police had just recovered their stolen vehicle. And lastly, to note, no one has come forward to corroborate or confirm Charles's aggressive or abusive behaviour. On the contrary, many have said the opposite. This case was closed after law enforcement sided with Alex, but it has recently been reopened and Laurie is being investigated on the part she played in Charles's death. The next day, Laurie texts her stepsons, Charles's children, a little after 4:30 p.m, around 20 hours after Charles was shot dead, to tell them that their father had died. The text reads, I have very sad news. Your dad passed away yesterday. I'm working on making arrangements and I'll keep you informed with what is going on. I'm still not sure how to handle things. Just want you to know I love you and so did your dad. Heart emoji. She doesn't tell them how he died, and when one of the sons asks, she replies, "We are still waiting for the ME report." The son asks a series of questions trying to work out what happened and gets no response. He tries again at 6:54 p.m. and again gets no response. Angrily, he texts again at 8:20 p.m. and Laurie replies, simply saying, "We are still waiting for the ME," with no mention of a gunshot wound. Cheryl Wheeler, Charles's ex-wife and mother of their 2 children, tells Dateline how upset she was for her sons to find out about Charles's death this way. She seems notably sadder during this interview than Laurie seemed minutes after Charles's death. She said she thinks Alex is lying, as Charles wouldn't lose his temper to a degree that would warrant shooting him in self-defense. Cheryl manages to find out online via the ME website that Charles's death had been classified a homicide, and upon further research she finds out that he had actually been shot by Laurie's own brother. Only 2 days after Charles's death, Laurie attempts to file a claim on Charles's $1 million life insurance policy and discovers that she cannot make the claim as she has been removed as sole beneficiary of this life insurance policy. Back when Charles filed for divorce and explained to his lawyer that he feared for his life, Charles had decided to put his sister Kay down as the sole beneficiary of this large life insurance sum. Laurie would eventually text Charles's sister Kay saying 5 kids and no insurance money and his sister gets everything, meaning that Kay would receive the full payout while Laurie and Charles had the 5 kids between them. Laurie's son Colby, her daughter Tylee, Charles's 2 grown sons, and of course their adopted son JJ. Charles's son continued to text Laurie asking for answers. She replies on the 13th of July, saying that she is still working on arrangements and sorting things out best she can. Again, Charles's son asks why she won't just tell him what happened, and on the 14th of July, Laurie leaves a voice message inviting Charles's son to talk. However, 3 days after this, the sons still have no contact and no answers about how their dad had died. He wrote in a text message, "The only information we have is the one text from you saying he passed away. You disappeared after that. We need any information you have. What happened? When did it happen? How did it happen? Where is he? Are there any funeral plans? And can my brother and I be a part of it?" He later asks why Colby and Tylee haven't contacted them at all and why Colby didn't answer his phone calls. He ends the text with, "This isn't a nonchalant topic you can just throw a text at and be done with." Around the 22nd of July, Laurie tells staff at the Life Academy that Charles had actually committed suicide. After the academy learns that Charles was in fact shot, they file another report with Child Protective Services, or Arizona's Department of Child Safety. JJ goes on to start the new school year at the Life Academy on the 5th of August 2019. And on the 9th of August, Laurie puts JJ's dog Bailey up for sale with this description. "Bailey has such a sweet spirit. He has brought so much love to this home. But his owner recently died and he needs a new home. He is fully trained with certification as a service dog, up to date on vaccinations, has been trained with children in the home, from a non-smoking home. Bailey is sweet and friendly around other dogs. Looking for new owners who will appreciate and love him the way he has been loved. We spent $7,000 on service training. He is a full-bred golden doodle, has experience on airplanes, has experience with people with autism." Laurie was later told by the organisation where they got Bailey from that she couldn't just sell the dog, she would need to return him. Bailey has since been placed with a new family and a boy with autism. On August 10th, 2019, this would be the last time that Kay and Larry Woodcock hear from JJ Vallow via a FaceTime call. Kay reports the call was around 35 seconds long, and that JJ looked as though he was being coached, looking up from the camera and then saying that he had to go.
Hey, it's Ryan Seacrest. Life comes at you fast, which is why it's important to find some time to relax. A little you time. Enter Chumba Casino. With no download required, you can jump on anytime, anywhere for the chance to redeem some serious prizes. So treat yourself with Chumba Casino and play over 100 online casino-style games, all for free. Go to ChumbaCasino.com to collect your free welcome bonus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
After this phone call, they are slowly edged out of JJ's life for a little more than 3 months, despite multiple attempts to get a hold of him. It would be on the 25th of August, 15 days later, that Kay would send Laurie an email begging to FaceTime and visit with JJ. 2 days later, Laurie's apartment was taken off of the market. On the 30th of August, 5 days after Kay had emailed begging to see JJ, Laurie stops by the workplace of her oldest son, Colby Ryan, to tell him in the parking lot that she, Tylee and JJ were moving the next day. Colby says he didn't ask where they were moving to, and didn't think to until detectives would come to his door on November the 27th, 2019 to inquire about the whereabouts of his younger brother and sister. Also later this day, Laurie has JJ's service dog Bailey picked up by Dog Training Elite in Arizona. Laurie had asked the organisation to find the Golden Doodle another family because she could no longer take care of him due to a change in life circumstances. Annie writes in her timeline here that Bailey was an adorable and sweet-natured dog that stayed close by JJ's side and ran more like a bear cub than a dog when she was there in 2018. The next day, on the 31st of August, Laurie, Tylee, JJ moved to Rexburg, Idaho. It is around this time that JJ's grandparents, Kay and Larry, call the Life Academy asking if JJ was okay. Early September, Laurie would enroll JJ into a new school, the Kennedy Elementary School in Rexburg. JJ has his first day at this school on the 4th of September. On the 5th, Laurie emails the Life Academy and says that she needs to withdraw him immediately. She allegedly told staff over the phone that she accepted a position in California, which was not true, and that his father committed suicide, which is also not true. The next day, neighbours take a picture of Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow with an unidentified child through their blinds. When asked why, they said they thought it was strange that the children were using stuffed animals to play in a large puddle of water. This would be the second to last time that Tylee Ryan is seen alive. The last time is 2 days later, in September 8th. On the 7th of September, Laurie accesses JJ's app from his old school, logging into the school network. On the 8th of September, this is the last day that Tylee Ryan is seen alive. It is in a picture obtained from Laurie Vallow's iCloud account. Tylee is seen at the entrance of Yellowstone National Park. Tylee was at the park with Laurie, JJ, and Laurie's brother, Alex. This is the last time we can find any record of Tylee being with Laurie. The affidavit of probable cause says, "We have found no witnesses who can verify they have seen Tylee since September 8th, 2019. This detail, in concert with the nanny interview that we see later on, indicates Tylee may have met her fate at the hands of Alex and Laurie at Yellowstone. Annie says, "I hope to God I'm wrong, but if I'm right, the fact that Laurie would take a picture of Tylee at the entrance just to be led off like a lamb to the slaughter later that day is suggestive of getting a keepsake of the moment." Annie goes on to say, "When I went to be interviewed for the Dateline episode, someone kindly offered to take a picture of me. I declined, telling him I didn't want to remember this day. I'm not trying to set myself up as some kind of model to be emulated, and I'm not seeking the highest moral ground I can find. There would have been nothing wrong with agreeing to the picture. I just knew I'd never flip back through my photos and want to see any reminder of this nightmare. So in my mind, the fact that Laurie would take a picture of Tylee at the entrance as a keepsake is potentially bone-chilling. I am no longer willing to give her any benefit of the doubt. The fact that she could allegedly refer to JJ as her niece's drug baby, lie repeatedly, try to hinder the investigation, and do everything else she's done before and after Tylee and JJ went missing disqualifies her from receiving any more benefits from me. The Laurie that I knew and loved appears to be gone." Annie finishes this part by saying she has the right to a fair trial by law, but I'm not beholden to extend her those same rights. On the 17th of September, Laurie's neighbour in Rexburg, Idaho, captures the last known footage of JJ Vallow playing outside. The next day, a nanny Laurie hires through Care.com for what she thinks is long-term care comes to the house for the first time to babysit JJ. She tells the nanny her husband died of a heart attack in Arizona and that her daughter was going to school in Rexburg. The nanny describes Tylee's presence in the home as intermittent visits. She says occasionally her daughter would come visit for dinner or do laundry, but she never said that she lived there with them. It appeared that only Laurie and JJ lived there from the looks of things and from what Laurie told me. It would appear that Tylee Ryan went missing sometime between September 8th and September 18th. On the 18th of September, Kay Woodcock sends Laurie another email, begging to be able to call and visit with JJ. The next day, the nanny Laurie hires returns for a second day of caring for JJ. She notes several things from that day. Laurie jokes that sometimes she gives JJ his medication early so that he will sleep earlier to give her a break. Laurie told her that her brother, Alex Cox, is coming over and they're going to Idaho Falls Airport. Alex comes over and says hello and then leaves with Laurie. JJ went to play at a neighbour's house and came home for dinner. After dinner, he wanted to go back to the friend's house, but the nanny said no. JJ had a meltdown and threw furniture and told the nanny he hated her and didn't want to be her friend. The nanny went upstairs to find JJ hiding under Laurie's bed. JJ's room had only toys. There was no bed. JJ slept on a small mattress in the corner of Laurie's room. Laurie, Alex and Laurie's friend came home. Laurie babied JJ to comfort him. Laurie told the nanny that their friend did podcasts with her. Laurie gave her $40 in cash and then never called for her services again. This out-of-town friend was in Laurie's home 4 days before JJ was last seen. Annie asks, who is the mystery woman? She says, I'm only aware of 2 female blogging buddies, but one has denied ever meeting Laurie and her kids, and the other told law enforcement less than a week later she hadn't seen JJ in months. On the same day, a Rexburg woman claims to have been on a flight with Chad Daybell from Idaho Falls to Arizona. The woman said Daybell planned to help a relative in the valley who needed to remodel her home. She said, quote, he said, I hope we can get this work done in the time that I have before I have to be back. The woman asked to remain anonymous. It is actually confirmed later on that it is Melanie Gibb that visits Laurie in Rexburg between the 19th and the 23rd. Tylee was already missing by this point, and Melanie said Laurie so much as mentioned her, except to say that she was at Brigham Young University. Law enforcement confirmed that Tylee was never enrolled at Brigham Young University. On the 23rd of September 2019, JJ Vallow is last seen at Kennedy Elementary School. This would be the very last time that JJ would be seen alive. And this is where I've decided to end part 1 of this 2-part episode. If you are in a cult or know someone who might be, please follow the link in the description for advice and support. You can find all of the source material that I have referenced here in the show notes. If you have an idea for an episode, please get in touch at cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com or cultvaultpod on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Cult Vault. I'm your speaker Casey, and join me soon for part 2 of The Cult Mum and Doomsday Dad.
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.